The moment Representative Peter Welch looked up, locked eyes, and calmly asked a question that no one in that room expected, everything shifted. Because this wasn't just about flights or sports games or who sat next to who at a hockey rink. This was about something far bigger. What happens when the person running one of the most powerful agencies in the country can't explain why taxpayer-funded jets keep landing at UFC fights, celebrity events, and personal weekends away? And the way Welch unraveled it, piece by piece, left the entire room frozen. He didn't yell. He didn't grandstand.
Example. I want to congratulate the FBI. I want to congratulate the Utah state and local law enforcement for the very good work that it did in apprehending the violent assailant of Charlie Kirk, and that is a terrible, terrible tragedy. Director Patel, at one point you made an announcement that the suspect was in custody. We got our man. It turned out that was not true. In fact, I think that was about 27 hours before the person now in custody was apprehended. Why did you make that statement?
Thank you, Senator. Appreciate you letting me address this. What the FBI does is not just locate and find suspects, but we also participate in eliminating subjects. And what we had at the time was a subject in custody in relation to this investigation. So in my commitment to work with the public to help identify subjects and suspects, I put that information out. And then when we interviewed him, I put out the results of that. And could I have been more careful in my verbiage and included an A subject instead of subject? Sure, in the heat of the moment, but I was doing the best I could.
In all candor, I don't quite get that, because if we have our man, that would suggest to the public that everybody can rest and relax and not then continue to provide information to local law enforcement and to you. So that was a mistake.
I don't see it as a mistake. I see it as something working with the public to identify that there was a subject
So if
in
you
custody.
if you put out a statement that says we've got our man, and in fact it turns out that you didn't have your man, that's not a mistake?
But that's not what I said.
Well, I'll go on. That's my understanding. A second thing that is really important in the FBI, but it's important in every agency, is that the folks who are doing good work get supported for the work they're doing. And a number of highly successful FBI agents have been let go. And I want to just ask you a little bit about that. You know who Brian Driscoll is, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And my understanding is he served at the FBI for over 18 years. You agree?
I believe that's accurate.
Special agent in charge of the Newark office. He was commander of the FBI's hostage rescue team. That's a very prestigious and responsible position, correct?
It is.
Section chief of the Critical Incident Response Group's tactical section. You've got to be pretty good to get that high responsibility. You agree with that?
Yes, sir.
He oversaw 55 SWAT teams, and they're like the elite of the elite, right? They go in to the dangerous situations, right? He got a Medal of Valor for his participation in a raid on ISIS terrorist Abu Sayyaf, who had kidnapped American citizens Kyla Mueller, right? Mueller? Is that right?
I know.
You're in agreement, right?
I know Kayla Mueller's family, yes. I know the situation.
Okay, and he got Kurt Meyer, somebody who had barricaded himself in a bar after he killed 4 people and wounded 2. And Driscoll was part of the team that went in there and took that guy out, right?
I don't have all the details, but I'll take your word for it, Senator.
And he got into trouble when Emil Bove demanded a list of FBI agents who investigated January 6th and was apprehensive that what did happen ultimately would happen, and that is those folks would get fired. I mean, do you agree with me that a boss who stands up for his subordinates when they did the job that was asked of them is a stand-up person and somebody to be admired?
Generally speaking, yes, sir.
Pardon me?
Generally speaking, yes, sir.
But Driscoll got fired, right?
Again, that matter is under litigation, and the matter you referenced occurred before I was
Okay, but
director.
let's just keep it really narrow here. He's fired, right?
Yes, he was terminated.
And he has to be, there's somebody communicates to him that he's terminated, correct?
That's my job.
That's your job. So you communicated to him that he was fired.
I did.
So, I have a hard time with this because that record suggests to me that this person is like worthy of consideration for the Presidential Medal of Freedom, and he got fired.
But there's also a record of other information that was available, and now that this matter is pending litigation, we will get that out in due course. But as you can
the
agree,
so-called, so you've got, quote, other information that you see as a valid basis to fire somebody who, from what I can tell, had an absolutely outstanding record and who crossed the threshold of getting in trouble because he was standing up for agents serving under him who did work that was assigned to them that happened to be related to the January 6th uprising.
again, you're correlating based on your information the reasons for his termination, and I'm telling
No,
you,
that's right. Let me ask you another question. When you were here, you were rightly critical, not here actually, I guess it was on Cash's Corner. You were rightly critical of the way that the previous FBI director used the FBI jet. And you said you wanted to ground Chris Wray's private jet travel that he pays for with taxpayer dollars to hop around the country. Let me ask you this. On the weekend of, according to flight tracker data, on the weekend of March 7th, an FBI plane flew round trip from D.C. to Las Vegas, and you attended a UFC fight with Mel Gibson, and I'll show you that. Is that you, and is that true?
Yeah, you want to know the difference? I live in Las Vegas. I'm allowed to go home. I didn't leave a congressional hearing early on an FBI jet to dodge questions.
All right. Then on April 5th, you attended a hockey game in New York City. You don't live there, right?
No, I don't.
By the way, everyday FBI agents who are assigned in Washington don't get to fly home on a private jet.
Well, this is a great point. Do you know why I have to use a private jet? Because Congress made it mandatory.
Okay. In April 5th, well, we didn't make it mandatory that you go to UFC games with Mel Gibson.
Are you telling me I can't go home?
You got to use some judgment here.
So when I'm at
Beth,
home,
you
I
would-
can't do what I'm doing when I go home. Everybody else is allowed to go home,
Let
just
me
not
keep
me.
going. No, I'm glad you go home. I
Okay.
love to go home, but I don't go home on a private jet. On April 5th,
They're not mandated to do so.
You attended a hockey game in New York City with Wayne Gretzky, and Flight Tracker says the FBI jet took you to and from New York City, where you don't live, right?
That's correct.
And on April 12th, on the following weekend,
He didn't need to. All he had to do was walk through the facts and watch the excuses fall apart right in front of him. What made this exchange so gripping wasn't the drama of the confrontation, it was the clarity of it. Because as Welch kept peeling back layers, one thing became impossible to ignore. This wasn't a story about travel habits. It was a story about priorities, integrity, and what happens when public trust collides with personal convenience. And the deeper it went, the stranger it became. Welch starts with what sounds like a simple question about an FBI jet leaving Washington and flying to Las Vegas on the exact weekend a massive UFC fight was happening. One attended by celebrities, influencers, and the kind of people who turn a sports event into a red carpet moment. When he asks whether that was Patel standing there with a well-known actor, Patel admits it without hesitation. But that's when the tension hits. Because what the public sees as a luxury weekend trip is being explained away as routine, unavoidable government travel. Patel insists he did nothing wrong. He says he lives in Las Vegas. He says he has to use the jet. He says Congress made it mandatory. But Welch pushes back with the question anyone watching would ask. Why does a top official get to fly private to go home when everyday FBI agents stationed far away from their families don't get that privilege at all? And that's where the cracks start forming. Patel says he's required to fly that way. Then he says he pays the commercial equivalent. Then he says he doesn't know the total cost. Then he claims he's actually saving taxpayers' money by using a different airfield than previous directors. Each explanation appears quickly, but none of them sit comfortably. Welch isn't comparing him to previous directors. He's comparing him to fairness, what ordinary citizens expect from the public servants who represent them. But Las Vegas wasn't the only questionable flight. Welch moves to a second trip, a hockey game in New York City, attended with a legendary athlete. Another moment that doesn't look like duty, but privilege. Again, Patel admits it. No denial, just a fast explanation. Then comes the third flight, another UFC fight, this time in Miami. 3 weekends, 3 major entertainment events, 3 taxpayer-funded round-trip flights. And Patel leans on the same argument each time. He pays the commercial equivalent, so everything is above board. But Welch isn't debating legal compliance. He's questioning judgment. Because while Patel keeps pointing to what the rules say, Welch is pointing to how the public sees it, how the average person watching this hearing would feel knowing that the most expensive asset, the plane itself, is being used for trips that look more like celebrity weekends than official business. And what makes this moment so compelling is that Welch isn't attacking Patel for having hobbies or traveling home. He's questioning why leadership gets access to privileges that regular agents never see, even as communities across the country struggle with shrinking budgets. Which leads to the next shock. Welch brings up a painful reality. Nearly $500 million in COP grants for local police departments have been cut. These are the grants that keep officers on the streets, keep small towns staffed, and support community safety at the most basic level. Towns like Burlington and Rutland rely on these grants just to maintain normal operations. Welch delivers the contrast with precision. Why are local officers losing funding while federal jets are making multiple cross-country pleasure trips? It hits hard because it's undeniable. Public safety isn't abstract. It's the officers who show up to emergencies, the patrols that keep schools safe, the departments that run on tight budgets. When that money disappears, people notice. Patel responds that he doesn't oversee DOJ grants. But that doesn't change the bigger point. Optics matter. Leadership behavior sets the tone. And flying private to major events while local departments struggle sends a message, one that is hard to ignore. But if the tension around priorities raised concerns, the next part raised eyebrows. Welch brings up the rumor of a second plane, a new FBI aircraft estimated to cost between $72 and $80 million. Patel instantly disputes the number, calling it inaccurate. But when Welch asks for documentation, proof, clarity, transparency, Patel says he'll supply it, but not today. And that becomes a repeating theme throughout the entire exchange. Answers that sound official but land vague. Explanations wrapped in technicalities rather than straightforward accountability. But the hearing wasn't just about travel, spending, and optics. Welch pivots to an even deeper problem: public communication during major investigations. He confronts Patel about a moment when Patel publicly declared, "We've got our man," before facts were confirmed. To the public, that sounds like the danger is gone, the case is closed. But Welch explains why this matters so much. Announcing something prematurely can change how the public behaves. It can affect cooperation with law enforcement. It can alert suspects. It can shift the entire trajectory of an investigation. Patel's response is procedural. He says he was helping identify subjects. But Welch isn't arguing process. He's arguing responsibility. Because when someone in Patel's position speaks, the public listens, and their reactions can shape real-world outcomes. And then comes the issue that adds emotional weight: the case of Brian Driscoll, a respected FBI veteran, a decorated operative, someone who led SWAT teams, hostage rescues, and dangerous missions for nearly 20 years. Reports suggest Driscoll faced termination after defending fellow agents working on sensitive, high-pressure investigations, standing up for colleagues following lawful orders. Welch frames it clearly. What message does it send when a decorated agent appears to be punished for defending other agents? Patel acknowledges the firing but avoids the core question. Another precise answer that avoids the deeper truth. And when you place all of these details together, the jet trips, the vague explanations, the premature statements, the internal retaliation concerns, the cuts to local law enforcement, the rumored multi-million-dollar plane, you start to see something forming. Not a conspiracy, not an accusation, a pattern. A troubling pattern of shifting answers, inconsistent priorities, and widening gap between leadership decisions and the public's expectations. Welch isn't dramatic. He isn't emotional. He stays steady, calm, deliberate, because this isn't personal for him. It's about public service, trust, integrity, and the belief that public institutions must earn their legitimacy through transparency, not privilege. And as the hearing closes, the message becomes clear. Government decisions never stay in hearing rooms. They ripple outward through budgets, departments, communities, and public trust. Every flight, every announcement, every unexplained expense, every firing, every cut, it all connects. And when the patterns don't make sense, people deserve answers. So think about your own community, your schools, your officers, your public institutions, your safety. Think about how much trust you place in systems you rarely see but rely on every single day. Because accountability doesn't happen automatically. Someone has to demand it. And Welch showed what that looks like. If you want more deep dive breakdowns like this, more unfiltered analysis of high-stakes hearings, and more stories revealing what really happens behind the scenes, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss what comes next.